U.S. congressmen are under fire this morning following revelations that the Democrats' pre-war trip to Iraq may have been funded by Saddam Hussein's intelligence agency. Could these lawmakers be prosecuted? Let's get our guest to weigh in on this.
Jed Babbin is the editor for Human Events. He joins us right now from Washington, D.C. Jed, we remember them in Baghdad before the war saying this place is beautiful, they have no weapons of mass destruction, and we should not have war here. What do we now know?
Well, we know a lot. We know, for example, that when he was in Baghdad, Jim McDermott, the hyper-liberal congressman from Seattle, was basically saying, well, you know, if we're here, we're going to help the children, and if we're going to be used by the Saddam regime in order to help the children, well, that's just fine. Even more, right now, there's a news story this morning in the Seattle Times. It really advances the story because it shows the timing of this thing really stinks. Apparently, McDermott was going to be planning a trip to Baghdad off and on for several months. All of a sudden, he calls these contacts who are supposedly funding the trip and saying, I need to leave in 3 days. And then they get this funding, apparently through this guy Al-Hanoudi, apparently from the Baghdad government. What's really interesting, Brian, is if you look at the timing here, it suggests to me that McDermott was in contact with the Baghdad regime, with Saddam's regime, asking them when he should come. They say, we'll roll out the welcome mat, get here in 3 days. All of a sudden, the trip happens. That stinks to high heaven.
Okay, so, Jed, is it possible that these three congressmen didn't know that they were being bankrolled by Saddam?
Well, I think it's possible, Allison, but I think it's pretty unlikely. You know, these guys have an obligation to go and look at who's funding a trip like this. At this time, let's not forget, Saddam's regime was under very significant sanctions. It was illegal to trade with them. You know, at this point, the statute of limitations has probably run. So if a crime occurred, you know, maybe they'll get away with it. But this stinks to high heaven. The House Ethics Committee should look into this, probably censure these guys.
Al-Hanoudi, this guy that set this whole thing up, the go-between from Michigan, he evidently met with Hillary Clinton at one point?
At some point, I have not confirmed that yet, but there's a report that he was welcomed into the White House. You know, who knows, maybe slept in the Lincoln bedroom one night. But the point of the matter is he was apparently welcomed into the White House by the Clintons. Yesterday, he was indicted for spying in behalf of Saddam's regime.
So do you look for these guys to be prosecuted, or just sent a message? What do you think?
I don't think they're going to get prosecuted, Brian. I think, again, the time has probably elapsed on the crime, if there was one. I think somebody ought to look into it. I think somebody ought to slap them with an ethics violation in the House. I guess that's pretty unlikely, too. They'll walk.
All right, Jed Babbin, editor of humanevents.com. We will keep on this. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks, guys.
Also, the feds want to know if one of the most popular